It was a dark, snowy afternoon in Montreal on December 6, 1989. Engineering students at École Polytechnique were nearing the end of their day when a nightmare began to unfold.
Witnesses called a human hunt, with the gunman yelling, "I want women." The eyewitness accounts were horrifying.
Il y a des morts, il y a plusieurs blessés. C'est un événement d'une extraordinaire gravité. C'est survenu à 17h25. Un homme, semble-t-il, armé d'on ne sait quoi, a fait feu sur plusieurs passants à l'intérieur de l'école polytechnique.
14 women were shot dead at a university in Montreal, sending shockwaves through the nation.
A lone gunman walked into Montreal's École Polytechnique, professed his hatred of feminists, and killed 14 women.
The worst mass murder in Canadian history appears to have been triggered by the suspect's hatred of women.
A crazed gunman burst into a classroom, ordering the male students to leave. He then began a deadly rampage. 14 women were murdered that day.
Tonight, worried parents rushed to the university, not sure if their children were safe. Police say they were besieged with calls from worried families.
On a pas d'appel de Chantal.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining with us from Bernadette McCann House and with us as we gather virtually to mark this day, the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. December 6th. A day that's forever seared into the minds of so many of us, because many of us remember exactly where we were when we heard the news of horrific violence in Montreal, when a man opened fire and stole the lives of 14 young women at École Polytechnique on December 6, 1989, which is why we remember. We come together each year and remember. We read their names and recall their faces, as we'll do in just a few moments, so that they will not be forgotten and so that we will remember. We come together and collectively share that sorrow and honor those whose lives have been stolen for being a woman. And because violence against women unfortunately did not end on December 6, 1989, we remember the women in our communities, in our county, who've been killed because they are a woman in the last year. And many of us are also remembering the other women over the years between then and now who have also been killed or have been subject to violence simply for being a woman. Because statistics tell us that at least 50% of women have experienced some kind of physical or sexual violence in their lives. Half of us. But you are not a statistic. You are not a statistic. You are loved. You matter. Your life is important and valuable. Your voice should not and cannot be silenced. And so we gather today and each year to remember, to cry, to mourn, to support and care for one another, to tell the stories of the women who've been killed and what they meant to us as human beings, as women. Because in remembering, we break silence. We turn on the light and shine it into the darkest corners of our lives and of society. Because where silence is broken, where shadows are exposed, hate and violence cannot flourish. And so in gathering to remember, we also gather to act. Violence against women is ongoing. It's happening today in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our county, which is why today is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Remembrance and action. We act to bring awareness. We act to create safe spaces that are easily accessible. We act to call out violence in whatever form we see it. Physical violence, emotional abuse, bullying, hate speech, misogynistic jokes. We act to talk about it with our children and friends and coworkers, because violence cannot flourish when it's out in the open. We act to create a safer society where we can raise our daughters without fear and where we can live lives that do not have the shadow of gender-based violence in any form hanging over top of them. We act because we wish there was no need for women's shelters, and that hope propels us forward. But first, we remember. And as we remember, I invite you to take a deep breath, to pause, to still your heart, calm your mind as we come together across the miles and light a candle, shine a light, and remember.
Bonjour et bienvenue à notre veille virtuelle qui marque la journée de commémoration et d'action contre la violence faite aux femmes. Le 6 décembre 1989, un jour que l'on ne pourrait jamais oublier, un jour que l'on ne devrait jamais oublier, le jour où le Canada a dû faire face à la misogynie parmi nous. Le 6 décembre 1989, le massacre de Montréal, la tuerie à l'École Polytechnique. Ce jour-là a plusieurs noms dans l'histoire canadienne. Le nom le plus important, le jour où 14 de nos jeunes femmes ont perdu la vie. 14 femmes qui avaient chacune des rêves, des espoirs, des buts. 14 femmes qui étaient membres d'une famille, membres d'une communauté. 14 hommes éteintes, tuées, tout simplement parce qu'elles étaient femmes. Le 6 décembre est devenu la journée de commémoration de ces femmes. Une journée de solidarité avec leur famille, avec leur communauté. Une journée où l'on s'arrête pour penser à ce qui est arrivé, à ce qui n'aurait jamais dû arriver. Une journée pour rendre honneur à ces femmes et à leurs proches. Et on sent de l'amour. On sent de l'amour pour ces femmes et pour leurs familles. On sent de l'amour pour les femmes près de nous, ainsi que pour les femmes loin de nous et pour nous autres. Quand on aime, on prend soin de nos personnes chères. Quand on prend soin, on guette, on protège. Le 6 décembre est aussi un jour où nous renouvelons notre lutte contre la violence faite aux femmes, de protéger, de prendre soin des femmes dans le monde, au Canada, dans nos communautés, chez nous. D'ici et le 6 décembre l'an prochain, exprimons-nous sur la violence dans nos communautés. Aidons les personnes qui ont un comportement violent à obtenir de l'aide. Élevons nos enfants de sorte qu'ils apprennent à résoudre les conflits sans violence. Assurons-nous que notre domicile, notre lieu de travail et notre communauté sont dépourvus de risques pour les femmes et les filles. Exprimons-nous contre les images médiatiques portant atteinte aux femmes et aux filles. Faisons la promotion de l'égalité économique et politique des femmes. Soutenons les organisations qui œuvrent pour mettre un terme à la violence faite aux femmes. Faisons don de notre temps et soutenons la cause. Souvenons-nous. Souvenons-nous. Souvenons-nous du 6 décembre 1989. Souvenons-nous des 14 victimes du massacre à Montréal. Souvenons-nous de l'amour pour elles, pour les autres, pour soi. Ce soir, allumons une chandelle dans le salon et dans le cœur. Allumons la chandelle pour elles, les victimes de la tuerie à l'École Polytechnique de Montréal, et pour toutes les elles qui souffrent de la misogynie. Merci.
Her name is Geneviève Bergeron.
Geneviève, 21, was a second-year scholarship student in mechanical engineering. She was a music lover who played the clarinet and sang in a professional choir. She considered studying music in university, but instead chose engineering. The engineering classes at Polytechnique were demanding, and Bergeron had hard work to do, but she never regretted her decision. Her name is Hélène Colgan. Hélène, 23, was in her final year of mechanical engineering and was interested in pursuing a master's degree. Her father said she was a studious young woman and would read anything she could get her hands on. She had 3 job offers and was leaning towards accepting one from a company based near Toronto. Her best friend, Nathalie Crocheux, was in the same class and was also killed in the shooting.
Her name is Natalie Croteau.
Natalie, 23, was a mechanical engineering student, 3 months shy of earning her degree. A resident of the South Shore suburb of Brossard, Couture had one younger sister. She was planning to take a 2-week vacation in Cancun, Mexico, with her best friend, Hélène Colgan, at the end of the month.
Her name is Barbara Dagnon.
Barbara, 22, was not someone bound by conventional limits. She had just 1 term to go before graduating as an engineer. She was already thinking about her career prospects. While attending École Polytechnique, Dagnon worked as a teaching assistant for her father, Pierre-Alain Dagnon, a mechanical engineering professor at the University of Quebec in Montreal.
Her name is Anne-Marie Edward.
A chemical engineering student, Anne-Marie, 21, loved outdoor sports, particularly skiing, and she was always surrounded by friends. Anne-Marie, a graduate from John Abbott College, fell in love with extreme sports, played chess, cribbage, baseball, and soccer, learned to kayak, and was involved in school government. At École Polytechnique, she immediately tried out for the school ski team. She was buried in her ski team jacket.
Her name is Maud Havernick.
She had earned a degree in environmental design from the University of Quebec in Montreal, but dreamed of becoming an engineer and decided to return to university. One of 3 Havernack sisters, Maud had an energetic personality. She was giving a presentation to her class when she was killed.
Her name is Barbara Kluchnik-Wadajevich.
Barbara, 31, was a first-year nursing student. She was the oldest of the 14 victims. She and her husband, who were high school sweethearts, moved to Montreal from Poland in 1987. The couple was in the cafeteria of the engineering school that night because it was the cheapest place to eat on campus.
Her name is Maryse Lagagnère.
Maryse, 25, was the only woman killed who wasn't a student at the school. She worked in the engineering school's finance department and was married to the love of her life just 3 months before her death.
Her name is Maryse Leclerc.
Maryse, 23, was a fourth-year materials engineering student and one of the top students in the school. She was a year from graduation. She was the first victim whose name was made public. Her father, Montreal Police Lieutenant Pierre Leclerc, was at the scene that night. He was the service's director of public relations and promised to go in and report back to the media, unaware that his daughter was among the victims. He found her lying next to the gunman. He immediately recognized her sweater, which she had worn to Sunday dinner the week before.
Her name is Anne-Marie Lemay.
Anne-Marie was 22 years old, a fourth-year mechanical engineering student, the elder of the two Lemay sisters from a Montreal suburb. Anne-Marie was nearing graduation and was helping organize the festivities. Outside of her studies, she sang in a rock band and was helping raise funds for the class trip overseas.
Her name is Sonia Pelletier.
At 28, Sonia was the head of her class and the pride of St. Ulrich, Quebec, her remote hometown in the Gaspé Peninsula. The youngest of 5 sisters and 2 brothers, her family said Sonia's dream was to return home to start her own engineering firm. She died on the last day of classes, before her final exams.
Her name is Michelle Richard.
Known as Mimi by her family, Michelle, 21, was a second-year metallurgical engineering student. She was the oldest of 2 children raised by a single mother, who described Michelle as her best friend and confidant. She was a strong student who, her mother said, was adored by everyone. She was giving a presentation to her class with classmate Maud Havernick when they both were killed.
Her name is Annie St. Arnaud.
Annie, 23, was a mechanical engineering student from Le Tuc, Quebec. The youngest of 3 and the first girl, Annie was a bright child who had a keen interest in ecology. She represented her 4-H club at the provincial level in her youth. She lived in a small apartment in Montreal and had talked about eventually getting married to the man who had been her boyfriend since she was a teenager. She was killed as she sat in her last class before graduation. She had a job interview with Alcan Aluminum scheduled for the following day.
Her name is
Annie Turcotte.
Granby, Quebec native Annie, 20, was in her first year of university and lived with her older brother in a small apartment near the university. The youngest of 3, she was a gifted student and was awarded a scholarship for women in science after she finished college. She was described as a gentle and athletic young woman who was as comfortable taking apart cars as she was baking with her mother. She went into metallurgical engineering with dreams of improving the environment.
Bonjour, Memingon Squadish Nakas Makwod Dodem, Pequak Nagon. My name is Chantal Chadwick, And I'm here today to honor our missing and murdered Indigenous sisters. Our red dress symbolizes all that have passed and that are murdered and missing. Today we pray and we honor everybody that has passed. From our east to our west, from our north to our south, we come together to honor each and every one that has been through trauma, that has been through abuse, and that has come through and is walking. Today we honor the ones that have not made it through, that are missing, murdered, and our Indigenous sisters, as well as our brothers and sisters of the world. Chimiigwech. To date, there are no numbers to show how many missing and murdered Indigenous people there are. The red dress comes in many different colors, many different sizes, so that it fits many different women that have gone missing, that have been murdered, and that have carried on to the spirit world. We know that it is important to keep this message on and allow our future generations to know that we have been walking this path and we will continue to walk and be strong for our murdered and missing Indigenous women. Miigwech.
Today, we also remember the women and children who were murdered in Ontario in the past year.
In honor of women and children still living with violence.
As we draw our commemoration of the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women to a close, on behalf of the board, staff, and volunteers at Bernadette McCann House, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support of the work that we do to end abuse. Thank you for remembering and acting to create a safer community for everyone.